Good morning, everyone. Hello from Portland, Oregon. It's nice to see you. I would like to do a series of musicology talks, and as you might know, I am a specialist, probably a renowned specialist, I suppose, in the study of music and the plague. And my first book, Singing in the Garden, examined the role of music during the Black Plague of 1348, specifically using the Decameron as a way of understanding how Florentines used music to ward off the plague. They would sing, they would dance, they would stay in a contained space and sing and dance with the idea to use music as a way of continuing a harmonious life in the household and as a way of keeping out the dreaded disease. So today I'd like to do a 15-minute presentation about music in 14th century Italy during the plague. We'll start then today with a famous fresco. This fresco appears in the cemetery. It's an enclosed cemetery in the town of Pisa. Pisa famous for its leaning tower. But for us 14th century folks and people who love music, even more famous for this fresco by a person named Buffalmacco, sometimes also known as Francesco Traini. This corner here that I'm showing you is of incredible interest, and that is because it has a musical scene. There are 10 people sitting in a garden. One holds a falcon, one holds a little dog, some people chat, and this is this beautiful psaltery here played by this woman seated, and then we have cut off, of course, from this image is someone playing a stringed instrument. This fresco is called The Triumph of Death. And what does it mean? Well, I've spent some time studying it. Here you have rich aristocrats on the other side coming upon people who have died. And you see that some of them even hold their noses. This is juxtaposed here with people sitting in a garden, tranquil, talking, listening to music, enjoying each other's company. We also know that there are 7 women in this picture and 3 men, and they add up to the number 10. Just keep that in mind as we move forward. So many scholars have discussed the meaning of this painting. What I've done in my career is try to figure out what is the role of music. It's so prominent here with 2 musicians in this painting. What is the role then? What does music tell us about culture in the 14th century? Well, as you can see, some are listening, some are not. And what's particularly interesting is the woman playing the psaltery. It's the only one that's really looking out into the audience directly. It's as if she knows something more than the others. And what does she know? Well, the idea here that was very prominent in the 14th century during the plague, and we'll read more about it in the Decameron, is that music was a reflection of a kind of divine harmony. And if produced in the right way, in a quiet, contemplative way, it would create a space in which people could find peace. So this juxtaposition is, in fact, a peaceful scene in the garden, where on the other side is this raucous, kind of disgusted scene of people coming across corpses. The fresco is entitled The Triumph of Death. Well, what is the triumph then? One could argue that this painting is about equality. That no matter how rich, how many dogs, how beautiful your hat is, we all end up in the same place, dead. In other words, we are equal. Now, hopefully, you've lived your life in such a way that you will go to heaven as opposed to something different. But this is the triumph of death in a way, it is the great equalizer. So, here in this musical scene, we enjoy life, we are grateful for life in a harmonious world where there is music. Here's another important fresco in the 14th century. This is called The Effects of Good Government in the City, and it was painted by Ambrogio Lorenzetti. It was painted before the plague. In fact, we think that Lorenzetti died from the plague. This painting, this fresco, is in Siena, also in Tuscany, south of Florence. It's a magnificent, magnificent scene. The space is delineated by, you see the walls of the city. You have the Sienese bell tower on the left with its cupola, its dome. And you have people going about their day in the city of Siena. Maybe you've been there in the Campo. Magnificent also here is a teacher giving a lecture. Are people resoling shoes. At the top, you see building being built and people sharing ideas. Well, what's most stunning, of course, to a musicologist is the prominence of music right in the middle of the scene. Here we have 10 people once again. That number 10 comes up over and over in relation to music. Now, one is singing and playing a tambourine. And many have talked about this scene in terms of 10 women in the middle, but newer scholarship and some questioning, are they in fact all women? Can we really be sure? They have longer gowns, but there are other people that are who are men, I guess in this world, cis men maybe, who also long gowns, so not clear. But what we do see is someone singing and playing tambourine in the middle of this bustling cityscape. So what does that mean? Why are they so prominent? Once again, here is a secular scene in which music tells the story of harmony. If you experience music in a contemplative, temperate kind of way with other people, this is a reflection of the good, of the effects that are good about good government. We are in harmony. We work together and we survive. Well, let's move to some other ideas that are coming from the 14th century as well. One, of course, the most important for me as a scholar has been the book called The Decameron. And you may not know, but I learned about the Decameron in graduate school in a course that I took with a wonderful teacher named Michael Long. And once I started reading it, I never let go. It became for me not only a place of incredible curiosity and mystery, but it almost became like a roadmap for life. I could learn about it, but it could also teach me lessons moving forward about how to be in the world. And particularly when I was 30, probably when I first learned about this book, how to deal with life's adversities. There was a roadmap. There is a roadmap in the Decameron. So what is the Decameron? It is a collection of 100 stories told over 10 days by 10 people. Here you have a picture by Waterhouse. The 10 people are 7 women and 3 men. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 women, and then the 3 men here. And it's an amazing idea. Boccaccio has what's called a frame story, in which he explains, in one of the most graphic descriptions of the plague ever written, that these 7 people met in the church of Santa Maria Novella in Florence. They met by chance. They were all there, sadly, because they had lost their family and friends. They meet and they talk and they decide, we have to live our life. We cannot let the plague destroy us any further. And they decide to leave Florence together and go out into the countryside and spend their days storytelling and playing music. And this is how prominent music is, in fact, in the Decameron. You see Dioneo, who's sitting here. He was the person who played the lute. But Fiammetta played as well. The women played and sang as well. I show you now something fantastic that I've used over many years, which is at Brown University. Early on in the 90s already, they created a website dedicated completely to the Decameron. So if you don't have a copy of the Decameron handy, you can go for free on the Decameron website and pull it up. So that's what I've done here. This is how the Decameron begins. Beginneth here the book called Decameron, otherwise Prince Galeotto, wherein are contained 100 novels, stories, told in 10 days by 7 ladies and 3 young men. And you remember when we go back to our fresco of this in Pisa, again, amazing. 7 women and 3 men, 10. We go back to our allegory. We don't really know the gender of these folks, but we do know that there are 10. When we go back here, there are 10. Now, what is the number 10? Numbers are going to be so important in the Decameron and in your life. 10 is a perfect number because you add 1, 2, 3, 4, and you get to the number 10. So I have contributed to this website. If we go to the arts here, and there's wonderful, wonderful contributions about how people have painted images of the Decameron. Then there's a famous movie by Pasolini in 1970 about the Decameron. And what I've really dedicated a lot of my career is what is the role of music in the Decameron. So you can scroll here and see music in the Decameron that I contributed. So I'd like to spend a little time there. As we said, the 10 people come together in what will be called the brigade. They call themselves the brigade, La Brigata. And after getting to know each other and realizing that they have to get out of there, they move and they get out of Florence. And first, we think they go towards Fiesole into the hills, but we don't really know. What's important here is crystal clear from the preface of the Decameron that the entire book is structured around 10 days, 10 stories. And right at the beginning of the preface, he says, I shall also include some songs, which these 7 ladies sang for their mutual agreement. The songs are really important structural pillars in the Decameron. At the end of each day, they sing a song. So each person will sing a song. Here is my well thumbed copy of the Decameron that I've had since my days in graduate school. I love this translation, by the way. If you want to purchase your own, I always go with this by G.H. McWilliam. One thing I learned once at a conference, interestingly enough, is that women rarely translate these big sort of seminal Western texts. Just recently, we've had some women translating. So that might be something as you move forward in your life as a humanist that you might want to do is translate the Decameron. I think women have translated certain stories. Anyway, it's set up in 10 days. The people go out into the country. They have a lot to eat. They drink a lot of wine. They enjoy each other's company. And at the end of the day, what Boccaccio does is he introduces a lyric right into the narrative. And it's introduced something like, no sooner did Pampinea hear the queen's command than Lauretta promptly began to dance, and she was joined by the others, whilst Emilia sang the following song in amorous tones. And then bing, you have the introduction of the text. And you hear afterwards that everyone kind of chimed in and sang together. And then they go to sleep. End day 1, beginning day 2. And the whole process starts again. They tell stories, each one of them at the end of the second day. Then the conclusion, once again, Boccaccio introduces a text that they sing and they dance to. In my scholarship, I started thinking, well, that's interesting. To me, that's very similar to this image. In other words, the artist has set up a frame into which he adds all of these elements, and he adds a musical element. You could also say that for this painting. This is in Florence. This appears in Santa Maria Novella. And it's a Dominican scenes. These are all Dominicans. But once again, here's a space into which the artist has put music. So I really argue in my book that I showed you right at the beginning, here, Singing in the Garden, that this becomes a kind of conceit, that the introduction of music into these social scenes, whether in a fresco or the Decameron of Boccaccio, introduces an element of harmony, of goodness, but also as a way of staying safe, as a way of creating the proper kind of social atmosphere that is self-contained, in which the brigade and these people can somehow battle the plague. Now, we say battle, it's an interesting problem in the Decameron. They do this telling stories, playing music for 2 weeks, but we know they go back. Now, well, scholars have talked about, do they survive when they go back? Boccaccio gives us no indication. But we do know that those 2 weeks that they've spent together in wonderful company with each other, they learn. They learn about life. They learn about ups and downs. And they learn what we would call right now to live in the moment and to make music and art and love. They fall in and out of love, a vital part that will allow them in some ways to go back. Just to finish up then for today, I would like to play you some of the kind of music that you might have heard during this time. All right, that was a piece that is called Per troppo fede. It is a 14th century Italian ballata. Ballata, just what it sounds like, ballare, to dance. This is the kind of piece, these are ballate that you see in the Decameron. He mentions it at one point. He calls it a ballata. And plus, also, they dance to them, so they are ballate. We have, the scholars, determined that this kind of monophonic ballata that you hear that was anonymous, Per troppo fede, would have been the kind of song that would have been heard in the Decameron. So I'd like to stop for today. I thank you for watching, and I look forward to reconnecting with everyone on more musicological topics. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.